The training hall stretched wide and tall, big enough to hold 300 cadets from 20 different species. Today, only 60 students filled the space, arranged in neat rows on the practice mats. The air smelled like sweat and the metallic tang of training weapons. Overhead lights hummed softly, casting everything in bright white. Taeyang stood at the back of the hall, arms crossed, watching. He was human, which meant he looked small compared to most instructors here. No scales, no fur, no natural armor, just plain skin, dark hair cut short, and eyes that missed nothing. He taught conflict resolution, though most species thought that meant teaching better ways to win fights. They were always surprised to learn it meant something else entirely. Beside him, Hana held a data pad tracking the session. She was his teaching assistant, also human, with quick fingers that flew across the screen. She glanced at Taeyang and gave a small nod. Everything was going normally. At the front of the hall, Instructor Velmore demonstrated a combat technique. He was avian, tall and covered in dark blue feathers with sharp eyes that could spot movement from incredible distances. His species built their society on strict hierarchies. The strongest led, the weakest followed, simple and clear. This strike targets the weak point in Drazen armor, Velmore said, his voice sharp and precise. He moved through the motion slowly so the students could see. His wing arms swept in a graceful arc that would be devastating at full speed. Note the angle. Too high and you waste energy. Too low and you expose yourself. The students watched carefully. Some took notes. Others tried to copy the movement. Among them sat Krivix, a young Torvan cub barely as tall as a human child. His fur was orange and black striped, and small ridges ran down his spine. He was the youngest cadet in the class, sent here by his father, a war chieftain who wanted his son to learn from the best. Krivix raised his paw. "Instructor, that technique is inefficient." The hall went quiet. Several alien students turned to stare. "You did not question an instructor's teaching." "Not directly. Not like that." Velmore turned slowly, his head tilting in the way avians did when confused. "Explain your reasoning, Cadet Krivix." "Drazen armor has 4 weak points, not 1, Krivix said. His young voice carried a sharp edge. "That strike only works if your opponent stands still. In real combat, you would fail." Something shifted in the hall's atmosphere. Hana felt it and looked up from her data pad. Taeyang remained perfectly still, but his attention sharpened. Velmore's feathers ruffled slightly. In avian body language, that meant irritation. "I have fought Drazen warriors in actual combat, Cadet, have you?" "No," Krivix admitted. "But my father has. He taught me proper techniques." "Then perhaps," Velmore said, his voice dropping lower, "your father should be teaching this class." It was a dominance display. A verbal one, but unmistakable. Velmore was reminding Krivix of the hierarchy. Student below instructor, child below adult. Torvan below avian. Krivix's ridges rose. His lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. A sound came from his throat, low and rumbling, building into a full snarl that echoed off the training hall walls. The effect was immediate. Every student in the room reacted according to their nature. The prey species froze. The predator species tensed, ready to fight or flee. The other instructors moved forward, hands reaching for weapons or preparing for combat. This was serious. In Torvan culture, a snarl like that was a direct challenge. It said, "Fight me or prove yourself weak." There was no third option. Velmore would have to respond physically or lose all authority. The only question was how badly Krivix would be hurt when Velmore put him down. Taeyang walked forward. He did not run, did not shout. He simply walked through the frozen scene with calm, measured steps. His boots made soft sounds on the training mat. Everyone watched him move, but no one tried to stop him. He stopped 3 meters from Krivix, close enough to be heard clearly. Far enough to not crowd the young Torvan. His hands stayed at his sides, relaxed and open. He was not threatening. He was not afraid. He simply existed in the space with complete certainty. "Apologize," Taeyang said. The word was quiet but clear, spoken in perfect Torvan dialect. The room became absolutely silent. Even the humming lights seemed to fade. Every being in that hall stopped moving. The other instructors, who had been preparing to intervene, froze mid-step. Velmore, who had been raising his wing arms in a combat stance, went completely still. The students did not even seem to breathe. Krivix stared at Taeyang, confusion replacing anger. His ridges were still raised, his teeth still showing, but his snarl had stopped. He did not understand what was happening. Humans were weak, small, no claws, no armor, no weapons. Why was everyone reacting to this human like he was the most dangerous thing in the room? Krivik started to say something, but the words died in his throat. Taeyang waited. He did not repeat himself, did not explain, did not threaten. He had made a simple statement and now expected it to be followed. The weight of that expectation pressed down on everything. Hana remained by the wall, datapad forgotten. She had seen Taeyang do this before, but it never stopped being impressive. Around her, the alien students whispered to each other in a dozen languages, trying to understand what they were witnessing. Human Taeyang, Velmore said finally, his voice uncertain in a way that shocked everyone who knew him. This matter follows Torvin protocol. The Cub has issued challenge. I must respond or lose honor. Taeyang turned his head to look at Velmore. His expression was not angry, not disappointed, just questioning. And what will that teach him, instructor? That might makes right? That respect is given through fear? He let the question hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Is that what we are preparing these cadets for? Another century of sovereignty wars? Velmore did not answer. Could not answer. Because they both knew the truth. Yes, that was exactly what most of the galaxy believed. Power determined hierarchy. Strength determined leadership. It had always been that way. But humans had proven there might be another way. And that possibility terrified and fascinated the galaxy in equal measure. Taeyang looked back at Krivix. The young Torvin was trembling now, though whether from anger or confusion or something else entirely, no one could tell. You disrespected your instructor, Taeyang said calmly. You threatened violence in a learning environment. Whether your culture permits it is irrelevant. You know it was wrong. He paused and the silence stretched. Apologize. Hana remembered the first time she saw humans change everything. She had been 12 years old living on Earth, when the news broadcasts showed the signing of the Accord Treaty. Every major species in the galaxy gathered on one station, sitting at one table, agreeing to end the sovereignty wars. No winners, no losers, just an agreement to stop fighting. Her father had cried watching it. We did this, he had said. Humanity did this. But young Hana had not understood. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had the weakest military, the oldest ships, the least territory. How could they end a war that had killed billions across 3 generations? Now standing in the training hall watching Taeyang face down a Torvin cub and an avian instructor, she understood. Humans did not end the war by winning. They ended it by refusing to let anyone win. Krivix was still frozen, staring at Taeyang. His claws dug into the training mat. His whole body was locked in the moment between attack and retreat, unable to choose either. Every instinct told him to fight, but something else, something new and uncomfortable, told him to listen. Around them, the other students watched with wide eyes. A Drazen cadet, armored and massive, leaned toward his neighbor and whispered, "Why did everyone stop? It is just a human." His neighbor, a small Quillix with 6 legs and compound eyes, whispered back, "You were not here during the wars. You did not see what they can do." "They are weak," the Drazen insisted. "No weapons. No armor." "That is what we all thought," the Quillix said quietly. "We were wrong." Taeyang did not move, did not speak again. He simply waited with the patience of stone, his dark eyes fixed on Krivix. The silence grew heavier, more uncomfortable. It pressed against everyone in the room. Finally, Instructor Velmore shifted his weight. "Human Taeyang, I do not understand your purpose here. If the cub does not apologize, he must face consequences. That is how order is maintained. Order through fear," Taeyang said softly. "Order through violence. Yes, that is one way." He tilted his head slightly. "But is it the only way?" "It is the natural way," another instructor said from the side. He was Krathen, built like a moving boulder with thick gray skin. "The strong lead, the weak follow. This is how all species survive." "Most species," Taeyang corrected. "Not all. Humans are an anomaly," the Krathen instructor said. "You ignore your nature, It makes you unpredictable. No, Taiyang said. We do not ignore our nature. We choose something different than our nature. There is a difference. Hana saw several alien students look confused at that statement. She did not blame them. Most species could not separate instinct from action. A Torvan felt anger, so a Torvan attacked. An avian felt threatened, so an avian displayed dominance. Simple cause and effect like breathing. Humans felt those things too. But humans could feel anger and choose not to attack, could feel threatened and choose not to retaliate. It was not natural. It was not easy. But it was possible, and humans had spent thousands of years learning how. During the Sovereignty Wars, Hana said suddenly, surprising herself by speaking, human forces encountered a Torvan battle fleet near the Kepler belt. The Torvans demanded surrender. Humans refused. The battle lasted 3 days. Everyone turned to look at her. She swallowed nervously but continued. Humans destroyed or disabled 47 Torvan warships, but they did not kill the crews. They captured them, gave them medical treatment, and held them safely until negotiations could begin. We know this story, Krivik said, his voice small and strained. My uncle was there. He said humans fought like demons but cried while doing it. We thought it was weakness. It was not weakness, Hana said. It was choice. They could have killed everyone. They chose not to, not because they were unable, but because they decided that preserving life was more important than proving dominance. But why? A student asked from the back. If you defeat an enemy, you should eliminate them. That is basic strategy. Basic strategy for a war you want to win, Taiyang said. But humans did not want to win the sovereignty wars. We wanted to end them. Different goal, different strategy. He finally moved, turning to address the whole class while keeping Krivix in his peripheral vision. Every species here evolved to survive. You developed instincts that kept your ancestors alive. Torvans learned to dominate or be dominated. Avians learned strict hierarchy. Drazens learned overwhelming force. These instincts served you well for millions of years. He paused, looking at each face. But survival instincts are not the same as thriving instincts. They keep you alive, but they do not help you grow beyond your base nature. Humans learned this the hard way. Through centuries of our own wars and conflicts, we nearly destroyed ourselves before we figured it out. Figured what out? Fellamore asked. The avian instructor's feathers had settled now. He seemed genuinely curious. That we could be better than our instincts, Taiyang said simply. That just because we feel something does not mean we must act on it. That we can choose our response instead of letting our biology choose for us. Krivix made a small sound, almost a whimper. All the anger had drained from him, replaced by something he had no name for. Shame, maybe. Or confusion. Or the uncomfortable feeling of having your world view cracked open. I do not understand, the young Torvan said quietly. How do you choose against what you are? Practice, Taiyang said. Lots and lots of practice. And it helps to have someone who expects better from you. He took a step closer to Krivix, then knelt down to be at eye level with the cub. I am not asking you to stop being Torvan. Your instincts are not wrong. They are just not enough. You can be fierce and respectful, strong and controlled, dominant and kind. These things are not opposites. They only seem that way because you have not tried combining them yet. Krivix's ridges lowered slightly. His claws retracted a fraction. But if I apologize without being beaten, others will think I am weak. Others who matter will think you are strong, Taiyang said. Strong enough to admit error. Strong enough to choose a better path. Strong enough to grow. The training hall remained silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer the tense silence of impending violence. It was the silence of watching something important happen. Something that might change everything. Vellamore watched the human and the Torvan cub, and something shifted in his understanding. Perhaps, he thought, there was wisdom in this approach. Perhaps the old ways were not the only ways. Krivix trembled, standing at the edge of a choice that would define him. In another part of the academy station, Jiho was teaching a history class. He stood before a holographic display showing Earth's timeline, pointing at various events while his students took notes. Jiho was stocky and solid, with gray in his hair and old scars on his hands. He had fought in the sovereignty wars and carried those memories with him. Today we talk about why humans are different, he said, changing the display to show various alien species alongside humans. Not better, different. Important distinction. A Quillic student raised 2 of her legs. Instructor Jiho, my parents say humans are dangerous because you have no honor instincts. Is this true? Jiho smiled. Your parents are half right. We do not have honor instincts the way other species do. A Torvan feels honor in their bones. An avian knows hierarchy from birth. These things are wired into your brains before you can even think. He tapped his chest. Humans have to learn these things. We are not born knowing right from wrong. We have to be taught. Our children are born helpless, knowing nothing, and we spend years programming them with our values and beliefs. That sounds like a weakness, a Drazen student said. Our children know combat basics within days of hatching. It is a weakness in some ways, Jiho agreed. But it is also our greatest strength, because if morality is taught rather than instinctive, it can be changed, improved, adapted to new situations. He changed the display to show human history, wars, violence, destruction. Look at this. Humans have done terrible things. We enslaved each other, committed genocides, created weapons that could destroy entire planets. For most of our history, we behaved exactly like the warrior species we now lecture about peace. The students looked uncomfortable. They had not expected a human to admit these things so openly. So what changed? Jiho asked. Why did humans stop acting on our worst instincts? Because we chose to. We looked at what we were doing and decided it was wrong. Then we taught our children different values, and those children taught their children. And slowly, over generations, we became something new. A small voice from the back said, but instincts are stronger than teaching. Everyone knows this. Are they? Jiho challenged. He walked to the center of the room and suddenly shouted, loud and aggressive. Half the students jumped or flinched. Their instincts reacted to the perceived threat. Then Jiho smiled and spoke normally. Your bodies just reacted. Fight or flight. Ancient instinct, millions of years old. But now, even though your heart is racing and your body is ready to run or attack, you are sitting still. Why? Because your conscious mind overruled your instinct. You chose not to act on what you felt. He let that sink in. Every species here can do this to some degree, but humans have practiced it for so long, built entire philosophies around it, that we can override almost any instinct. This makes us seem strange, unpredictable, sometimes frightening. During the war, a student said slowly, human soldiers would rescue enemy wounded, even while battles were still happening. My older brother was saved by a human medic who had no logical reason to risk her life for an enemy. He said she was crying while she worked. Why would she cry? Jiho's expression grew sad. Because she was human. She felt compassion for your brother's pain even though he had been trying to kill her moments before. Her instincts told her he was a threat. Her training told her he was an enemy. But her choice, her human choice, was to see him as a person who needed help. And that conflict between what she felt and what she chose to do created emotional pain. We call it moral struggle. That sounds exhausting, the Quillic student said. It is, Jiho admitted. Being human is exhausting. Every day we have to choose to be good when being bad would be easier. We have to choose patience when we feel anger. Choose kindness when we feel hate. Choose mercy when we want revenge. It never stops. It never gets easier, but we do it anyway. Why? Several students asked at once. Jiho was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain. Because we learned something important. We learned that the type of society you build depends on the choices you make every day. If you choose violence, you get violent society. If you choose dominance, you get hierarchical society. But if you choose cooperation, respect and growth, you can build something better, something that lifts everyone up instead of pushing others down. He changed the display to show the Galactic Academy. This place exists because humans refused to accept that war was inevitable. We fought for 20 years not to win, but to prove that there was another option. We took damage we could not afford, lost people we loved, kept fighting when any logical species would have surrendered. My commander called humans insane, a Krathan student said. He said you fought without strategy, without goal, without reason. We had a reason, Jiho said firmly. We fought for a principle. The principle that all species could coexist without one dominating the others. Most of you thought it was impossible, that someone must be on top, someone must be on bottom. That is how your instincts work, he smiled. But humans do not let instincts decide what is possible. We decide what we want to be possible, and then we make it happen, even if it takes generations, even if it seems impossible, especially if it seems impossible. Back in the training hall, Kravix was still frozen, still struggling. He could hear Taeyang's words, but they fought against everything his biology told him. Torvins did not apologize without being beaten. It was not done. It was not possible, except it was possible, because Taeyang was offering him the choice, and that meant it could be done. The question was whether Kravix was brave enough to do it. Hana watched the young Torvin carefully. She remembered her own struggles learning human philosophy in a galaxy that did not think that way. It was hard for humans, and they were raised with these ideas. How much harder must it be for an alien child whose entire species thought differently? She took a step forward slowly and carefully. Her hands were open and visible. She knelt beside Kravix, making herself small and non-threatening. "It is hard, is it not?" she said gently. "Choosing to do something that feels wrong to everything you are. But that is what growth is. Growing means becoming more than what you were born to be." Kravix looked at her with eyes that were too old for his young face. "What if I am not strong enough?" "You are," Hana said with certainty. "You are strong enough to snarl at an instructor in front of everyone. That took courage, even if it was wrong. Now use that same courage to do something right, to be brave enough to admit error." She glanced at Taeyang. "He did not ask you to submit. He asked you to be accountable. There is a difference. Submission is forced. Accountability is chosen." Around them, the other students and instructors watched. Some understood what was happening. Others were confused. But all of them sensed that something important was taking place. Something that might change how they thought about strength, honor, and what it meant to be a warrior in a galaxy trying to find peace. Kravix felt like he was being torn in two. Every part of his body screamed at him to fight or run. His ridges wanted to stay raised. His claws wanted to stay out. His teeth wanted to stay bared. These were not choices. They were automatic responses coded into his genetics by millions of years of evolution. But Hana's words echoed in his mind. Accountability is chosen, not forced, chosen. He looked around the training hall with new eyes. Every species here was watching him, waiting to see what he would do. Some expected him to attack. Others expected Velmor to put him down violently. That was normal. That was how things worked in the galaxy. But the humans expected something different. They expected him to choose, and somehow their expectation felt heavier than all the instincts in his body. "I do not know how," Kravix said, his voice breaking. "I do not know how to go against what I am." "Start small," Taeyang said. "Retract your claws." It sounded simple, but when Kravix tried, his body fought him. His claws wanted to stay out, ready for battle. It took real effort, conscious will pushing against unconscious reflex to slowly draw them back into his paws. "Good," Taeyang said. "Now lower your ridges." Again, Kravix struggled. The ridges along his spine were raised in threat display. Lowering them meant making himself vulnerable. Every Torvin instinct rebelled against that idea. But he focused, concentrated, and slowly felt them settle. "Very good," Hana said softly. "See, you can do it." "You are doing it." Kravix realized something strange. With his claws retracted and ridges lowered, he did not feel weak. He felt something else. Something he did not have a word for in Torvin. It felt like control. Like he was in charge of himself rather than his instincts being in charge of him. "This is strange," he said quietly. "This is growth," Taeyang replied. "You are learning that you are more than your biology. You have instincts, yes, but you also have will, mind, choice. Those things can be stronger than instinct if you practice using them." Around the room, other students were having their own realizations. A young Drazon cadet whispered to his neighbor, "Did you see that? He actually controlled his threat response." "I did not know that was possible." "Humans do it all the time," another student answered. "My brother says human soldiers would be terrified in battle but keep fighting anyway." Fear and action separated. He said it was the scariest thing he ever saw. Instructor Velmor watched with growing understanding. His own feathers had been ruffled this entire time, an automatic response to threat. Now consciously he smoothed them down. It felt unnatural, wrong, but also interesting. "Instructor Taeyang," Velmor said carefully, "if I understand correctly, You are teaching the cub to override his nature. But is this not dangerous? Instincts exist for survival. Instincts exist for survival in the environment they evolved in, Taeyang corrected. Krivix's ancestors needed instant aggression to survive. But Krivix does not live in that world anymore. He lives here in a multi-species academy, learning to work with beings different from himself. His old instincts are not just unhelpful now. They are actively harmful. He gestured around the room. The same is true for all of you. You are training to be officers in a peaceful galaxy. Your old warrior instincts will start conflicts, not end them. You need new tools. Better tools. And humans have these tools? The Krathan instructor asked, skepticism clear in his voice. Humans practice these tools, Taeyang said. We are not perfect. We fail constantly, but we keep trying, and that persistence, that refusal to give up on being better is our real strength. Krivix felt something shift inside him, a decision forming. It was still hard, still uncomfortable, but he understood now that hard and wrong were not the same thing. He looked at Instructor Velmore. The avian was watching him with less anger now, more curiosity, maybe even a little respect for his struggle. Taking a deep breath, fighting against every instinct in his body, Krivix spoke. Instructor Velmore, I apologize. The words felt strange in his mouth, foreign, but he kept going. My challenge was inappropriate. I let anger guide my actions instead of judgment. That was wrong. The training hall remained absolutely silent. Krivix's heart pounded in his chest. He had just done something no Torvan his age should be able to do. He had submitted without being beaten, had admitted fault without being forced, and he was terrified that everyone would think he was weak. But then Instructor Velmore did something even more unprecedented. The avian bowed his head, a gesture of acknowledgement in his culture. Your apology is accepted, Cadet Krivix. Velmore paused, and Krivix could see the struggle on the instructor's face. The avian was fighting his own instincts now. Then slowly and carefully, Velmore continued. And I apologize for allowing my pride to escalate the situation when redirection would have been wiser. Multiple students gasped. Some made noises of shock in their native languages. An instructor apologizing to a cadet violated dozens of protocols across dozens of species. It was unthinkable, but Velmore had thought it and done it. Thank you, instructor, Krivix said quietly. He felt strange, light, like something heavy had been lifted from him. Was this what humans felt when they chose accountability? This odd sense of freedom? Taeyang nodded once, satisfied. Good. Now we can continue learning. He said it casually, as if something revolutionary had not just happened, as if the entire dynamic of the training hall had not fundamentally shifted. He walked back to his position at the rear of the room. Hana followed, giving Krivix a small smile of encouragement as she passed. The training session resumed. Velmore continued his demonstration, but everything was different now. The students paid attention in a new way. They watched not just the techniques but the philosophy behind them. They started to understand that being a warrior in this new galaxy meant more than knowing how to fight. Krivix returned to his spot among the other cadets. The Drazen beside him leaned over and whispered, "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen." Krivix looked at him in surprise. "But I submitted without fighting." "Exactly," the Drazen said. "I could never do that. My instincts are too strong. But you did. You were stronger than your instincts. That is true strength." For the first time in his life, Krivix understood something his father had tried to teach him. His father had said that humans changed everything, that after meeting them, the galaxy would never be the same. Young Krivix had not understood, now he did. Humans showed that choice was stronger than instinct. That will was stronger than biology. That any being, no matter their species, could decide to become something more than what they were born to be. It was terrifying. It was difficult. And it was the most important lesson Krivix would ever learn. The training session ended. As students filed out, many of them looked back at Krivix with new respect. Some with understanding, a few with confusion, still processing what they had witnessed. But all of them had seen something that would stay with them. They had seen that change was possible, growth was possible, being better was possible, and that possibility, once seen, could never be unseen. 3 months passed. The recording of the training hall incident had spread throughout the Galactic Academy and beyond. Psychologists analyzed it, military strategists debated it, Cultural experts wrote papers about it. What had seemed like a simple disciplinary moment had become something much larger. In a conference room on the Academy station, Hyun prepared to give a lecture. He was human, older than most instructors, with white hair and a calm presence. He worked in the diplomatic corps and had seen firsthand how humans changed galactic politics. The auditorium filled quickly. Cadets and instructors from dozens of species wanted to understand what had happened. Why had everyone frozen when Taeyang spoke? What power did humans actually have? Hyun stood at the front waiting for the room to settle. When silence fell, he began. "You have all seen the recording," he said. "Many of you are here because you want to understand. Why did everyone stop? Why did one word from a human carry such weight? Why did a young Torvan cub raised in warrior culture choose to apologize?" He paused, looking across the diverse species assembled before him. The answer is both simple and complex. You stopped because on some level, every species in that room understood that humanity represents something unprecedented in galactic history. A Drazen in the front row raised a claw, but humans are not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced. What makes them special? Exactly that, Hyun said. We are not special because of what we are. We are special because of what we choose to become. Let me show you something. He activated a holographic display showing human history. Wars, genocides, nuclear weapons, terrible things that made several students look away. This is humanity, Hyun said quietly. We are not better than you. Our history is drenched in blood. We have committed every crime we now ask you to move beyond. We enslaved our own people, destroyed our own environment, nearly wiped ourselves out with weapons of mass destruction. He changed the display to show modern Earth, peaceful and green, but we learned. We changed, not because we had to, but because we decided to, and that decision, made over and over across generations, transformed us. How long did this take? An avian student asked. Thousands of years, Hyun admitted. It was not fast. It was not easy. We are still not perfect, but we proved that change is possible. That species can evolve beyond their base instincts if they choose to. He changed the display again, showing the sovereignty wars. Battles in space, planets burning, millions dying. When humans entered the galactic stage, we found you here, fighting, dying, locked in wars that had no end because every species believed the same thing, that hierarchy must exist. That someone must dominate and someone must submit, that this was natural and unchangeable. It is natural, the Krathan instructor said from the back. Biology is not a choice. Biology is not a choice, Hyun agreed. But behavior is. Yes, you have instincts. Yes, you have drives. But you also have consciousness, mind, will, the ability to see your instincts, understand them, and choose different actions. He looked directly at the Krathan instructor. Your species is strong, nearly indestructible. Your instinct is to solve problems through force. But is that working? Has it brought your people peace? Prosperity? Or just endless conflict? The Krathan instructor did not answer. Hyun continued. Humans joined the sovereignty wars not to win, but to end them. We fought every major species to a standstill, not because we were stronger, but because we refused to stop until everyone agreed to peace. Real peace. Not conquest disguised as peace. On the display, the Accord Treaty signing appeared. Representatives from every species, sitting together, agreeing to coexist. This happened because humans proved something impossible. We proved that we could fight as fiercely as any warrior species, but stop the moment peace became possible. We proved that strength and mercy were not opposites. That victory and compassion could coexist. A small voice from the middle of the room said, But why should we change? Our ways have worked for millions of years. Hyun smiled sadly. Have they? How many of your species are extinct from these wars? How many planets destroyed? How much potential lost because everyone was too busy fighting to build anything better? He walked to the center of the stage. Change is hard. Choosing to be better than your instincts is the hardest thing any being can do. Humans struggle with it every single day. But the alternative is remaining trapped in cycles of violence that benefit no one. The display changed again, showing the academy itself. Students of different species training together, learning together, growing together. This place exists because of that choice, because enough beings decided that there might be a better way. It started with humans refusing to accept that war was inevitable. But it continues with all of you, learning these principles, choosing to apply them. In another part of the station, Krivix trained with his classmates. He moved through combat forms with a Drazen cadet on one side and an avian on the other. 3 species that had been enemies just a generation ago, now working together seamlessly. "Good form, Krivix," the avian said. "Your control has improved greatly." Krivix nodded thanks. Control, that was the word humans used. Not submission, not weakness, control. The ability to have power but choose when and how to use it. His father had visited last month. The old war chieftain had been shocked to see his son training cooperatively with former enemy species. They had talked for hours about what Krivix was learning. "You are becoming something I do not fully understand," his father had said, "but I am proud of you." That pride meant everything to Krivix, because it meant his father saw his growth, not as abandoning Torvan culture, but as expanding it. Being Torvan and being accountable were not opposites. They could coexist. Across the academy, similar scenes played out. Instructor Velimore had changed his teaching methods. He still taught combat, but now included human philosophy about when and why to fight. His students showed better cohesion, less injuries and training, more cooperation. Some alien instructors resisted these changes. They argued it went against nature, that you could not train warriors to be peaceful, that the old ways were the only ways that worked, but more and more the evidence spoke for itself. Cadets trained in human methods performed better in every metric except pure aggression. They solved problems more creatively, worked together more effectively, showed better judgment under pressure. The Galactic Academy Council had debated the issue for months. Finally, they reached a compromise. Human philosophy would be taught alongside traditional methods. Cadets could choose their path. Some would train the old way. Others would learn the new way. Over time, results would show which approach served the galaxy better. Now in the auditorium, Hyun concluded his lecture. "You asked what makes humans special. This is your answer. We are special because we proved that change is possible, that beings can become more than their biology demands, that consciousness can override instinct if you practice hard enough." He looked across the room full of young faces from dozens of worlds. "You are the next generation, the ones who will inherit this galaxy. The question you must answer is, what will you choose to be? Will you follow the instincts of your ancestors, or will you choose something new? Something better?" The room was silent, contemplative. "The choice," Hyun said softly, "is yours. It always has been. Humans just showed you that the choice exists." Months later, graduation day arrived. The ceremony hall was massive, decorated with symbols from every member species. Families filled the seats, watching their children receive certifications as academy graduates. Krivix stood in line with his fellow cadets. His father sat in the audience, chest puffed with pride. Beside Krivix stood the Drazen he had trained with, and the avian, and Aquilix, and representatives from a dozen other species. They had arrived as strangers from enemy worlds. They graduated as something new, not quite friends in the way humans understood it, but comrades, beings who had learned to see past instinct and recognize each other as equals. When Krivix's name was called, he walked across the stage. Taeyang waited there to present his certification. As he handed over the insignia, Krivix spoke quietly, just between them. "Thank you, instructor, for seeing who I could be instead of what I was." Taeyang smiled. "That is what we do. That is what makes us human, and perhaps what will make you all something greater than your ancestors could imagine." Krivix pinned the insignia to his uniform and looked out at the audience. His father met his eyes and nodded once. Pride and understanding passed between them. The old warrior recognized that his son had found a new kind of strength. The ceremony continued. One by one, cadets from every species received their certifications. Each one represented not just an individual achievement, but a small victory for the idea that beings could grow beyond their nature. In the back of the hall, Hana stood with other instructors, watching the graduation. "Do you think it will work?" she asked Taeyang quietly. "Can the galaxy really change?" "I do not know," Taeyang admitted. "Change is slow, hard. Some species will resist. Some individuals will fail, but enough will try. And that is how transformation happens. Not all at once, but person by person, choice by choice, generation by generation." He watched Krivix take his place among the graduates. That young Torvin chose to apologize when every instinct told him not to. If he can do that, others can too. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy learns that there is another way. The ceremony concluded. Graduates and families mingled, celebrating. Species that had been enemies a generation ago now shared food and stories. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still misunderstandings, still moments when instinct threatened to override reason. But there was also hope. Real, tangible hope that the future might be different from the past. And that hope, sparked by humans but now shared by countless beings, was the most powerful force in the galaxy.